Texas Highway 57 was as empty as any road he'd known in Siberia or Afghanistan. He considered the dying children ahead in the border town of Eagle Pass. He wanted to believe that they'd been brought across with some piece of smuggled radiological equipment. But that was the sort of thing that the suits at Langley would want to think, and that was what they must not be allowed to think. On his end of the intelligence community, you survived by expecting the worst. On their end, he who made waves was in the most danger, but their danger was demotion. His was death. His fear was that a bomb had come across and it was in motion right now. He needed to find it, or at least find its trail, and he thought it must start with these poor kids. If he got lucky, they'd have some specific information. If not, he'd take what he got and go from there. He wished that he trusted the system, but he was far too experienced for that. If he had, he would have called this thing in the second he heard about those kids. But he had feared what would happen. He'd find himself looking at orders not to waste his time. Wrong orders, and they would result in catastrophe. The front face of the intelligence community appeared formidable, but that was the work of media experts, not a reflection of reality. It was the filter of analysis in the secret rooms that didn't work, and not understanding that, or not accepting it, had been his potentially fatal mistake. He had assumed that the system would absorb the information that he and his strings of agents gathered, and respond correctly. But that hadn't happened when he was in Afghanistan, or Pakistan, or Siberia. So here he was, in Texas, chasing after nukes that should have been caught before they left whatever benighted place they had come from. Instead, they were here, and the Mexican border was now the front line of a battle that belonged 12,000 miles away. Something had been wrong out there. Very wrong. The CIA had extensive operations devoted to monitoring the nuclear materials black market. He had been part of that, operating out of U.S. embassies and available to do things like penetrate storage facilities and inventory their contents. He was also good at finding people and obtaining information. He was good at running, too. He'd escaped across many a border in his time. But he shouldn't have needed to do that sort of thing. He shouldn't have been compromised. Not ever. After 9/11, there had been a number of decoy companies created by the CIA to draw the interest of terrorists and smugglers by operating things like false weapons sales organizations. But there had been dissension about these fronts. They hadn't attracted their targets because they'd been too far from the centers of Muslim extremism. All except one, Brewster Jennings, which had operated in the Middle East and had been effective. However, Jim had believed, since he had first engaged with it in 2002, that it was penetrated by somebody. Soon after he began working with this organization, his life had become dangerous. People knew. Turkish intelligence had identified him. Friends in Pakistani intelligence warned him that they were building a dossier on his activities. Then had come the Valerie Plame affair in 2003, and the name of her front operation, which was Brewster Jennings, became as famous a name as Microsoft or Toyota. The result of all this was simple. Too many men like him had been compromised. Some must have lost their lives. He, who had been working halfway across the world, was now working in the United States, because there was now fissionable material in Mexico, probably in Canada, and it was on its way here. No question. As he sped toward the dying children, the fear he lived with every second of his life rose up in him, the sick, desperate urgency that dragged him awake nights and haunted his days. He was in the dark, and he was falling, and he could not stop falling.